Subscribe to my YouTube channel for deeply emotional, romantic, and mature stories that echo through your heart. Don't forget to like, share, and comment to support meaningful storytelling. The steam from the shower had barely begun to fog the mirror when Sarah heard a soft knock at the bathroom door. She paused, her hand hovering over the faucet, listening to the silence that followed. It was 6:30 in the morning, and her 10-year-old son Marcus should have been sound asleep for at least another hour. "Mom?" His voice came through the door, quiet but urgent in a way that made her heart skip. "Can I talk to you?" Sarah wrapped her robe tighter around herself and cracked the door open. Marcus stood in the hallway, his dark hair tousled from sleep, but his eyes were wide awake. The kind of awake that spoke of a restless night spent thinking about things too heavy for a child's shoulders. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" she asked, kneeling down to his level. The morning light filtering through the hallway window cast shadows across his face, making him look older than his years. Marcus shifted from foot to foot, his small hands fidgeting with the hem of his Batman pajamas. "I heard you crying last night," he whispered. Again. The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. She had thought she'd been quiet, that her nightly tears were her secret burden to bear. But children, she was learning, heard everything, especially the things adults desperately wanted to keep hidden. "Oh, honey," she began, but Marcus wasn't finished. "Is it because of Dad? Because he's with that other lady now?" Sarah's breath caught in her throat. 6 months had passed since David had packed his bags and moved in with his secretary, a cliché so painful it made her teeth ache. 6 months of trying to shield Marcus from the ugly truth of their crumbling marriage, of pretending that Daddy's new apartment was just a temporary arrangement, of holding herself together during the day only to fall apart once her son was safely asleep. But Marcus had been watching. Marcus had been listening. And now, standing in this hallway at dawn, he was asking questions that she wasn't sure she was ready to answer. "Mom." His voice was smaller now, uncertain. "Are you going to find someone new too? Someone who will make you happy again?" The question hung in the air between them like a bridge neither was sure they should cross. Sarah felt her carefully constructed walls beginning to crumble, and she wasn't sure if she should let them fall or fight desperately to hold them up. What she didn't know was that this conversation would change everything, that her son's innocent question would force her to confront not just her failed marriage, but the part of herself she had buried beneath years of trying to be the perfect wife, the perfect mother, the perfect woman who never asked for more than she was given. And she certainly didn't know that the answer to Marcus's question was already walking into their lives, carrying a toolbox and a smile that would make her remember what it felt like to be truly seen by someone who mattered. 3 weeks later, Sarah stood in her kitchen, staring at the growing water stain on the ceiling above the breakfast nook. It had started as a small discoloration, easy to ignore in the chaos of single motherhood. But now it spread like spilled coffee across the white paint, impossible to pretend away. "Mrs. Chen?" The voice came from behind her, warm and slightly amused. "I'm guessing that's our problem child." Sarah turned to find herself looking at a man who seemed to fill the doorway without overwhelming it. He was tall, with graying temples that spoke of experience rather than age, and hands that looked like they knew how to fix things that were broken. His smile was genuine, reaching his eyes in a way that made her remember she was still wearing her old yoga pants and an oversized sweater with a coffee stain on the front. "I'm sorry," as she began, suddenly self-conscious. "James Morrison," he said, extending his hand. "Your neighbor Mrs. Patterson recommended me. Said you had a plumbing issue that needed someone who actually knew what they were doing." His handshake was firm, warm, and lingered just a moment longer than necessary. Sarah felt something flutter in her chest, a feeling she'd almost forgotten existed. Sarah Chen, she replied, trying to ignore the way her pulse quickened. And yes, that ceiling has become my nemesis. I've been watching it grow for weeks, telling myself it would magically fix itself. James laughed, a rich sound that seemed to chase away some of the loneliness that had taken up permanent residence in her kitchen. In my experience, ceilings are terrible at self-repair. They prefer the dramatic approach, waiting until you have company over to really make their presence known. Well, at least it's considerate enough to warn me first, Sarah said, surprised by her own attempt at humor. When had she last joked with a man who wasn't Marcus's teacher or her divorce lawyer? Mind if I take a look upstairs? I'll need to see the bathroom above this spot to figure out where the water's coming from. As they climbed the stairs, Sarah became acutely aware of James behind her, not in a threatening way, but in a way that made her skin feel alive for the first time in months. When had she last felt attractive? When had she last cared if someone noticed the way her hair fell across her shoulders, or the curve of her waist? The bathroom was small, cramped, and filled with the accumulated chaos of single motherhood. Marcus's bath toys were scattered around the tub, her work clothes draped over the hamper, and her face cream sat open on the counter, next to a stack of bills she'd been meaning to pay. Sorry about the mess, she said, but James was already kneeling beside the tub, his attention focused on the pipes beneath. You should see my place, he said without looking up. I've been renovating it for 3 years and it still looks like a construction site had a fight with a furniture store. Sarah found herself watching the way his shoulders moved as he worked, the way his hands traced the pipes with gentle competence. There was something soothing about watching someone who knew exactly what they were doing. Someone who could identify a problem and fix it without drama or blame. Found it, James said, sitting back on his heels. Looks like the connection here has been slowly loosening. Probably been dripping for months, but so slowly you wouldn't notice until it finally made its way through the ceiling. Can you fix it? Absolutely. But I'll need to turn off your water for a few hours while I work. Will that be a problem? Sarah thought about her afternoon picking up Marcus from school, helping him with homework, making dinner. All things that required water. Actually, that might be perfect timing, she said. I could take my son out for the afternoon. He's been asking to go to the museum downtown, and I keep putting it off. James smiled at her, and Sarah felt that flutter again, stronger this time. Sounds like a plan. I'll get started around noon. Should be done by 5. That give you enough time? Perfect. As James gathered his tools, Sarah found herself not wanting him to leave. The house felt different with him in it, less empty, less echoing with the ghosts of her failed marriage. When the front door closed behind him, the silence rushed back in like water filling a vacuum. But this time, the silence didn't feel quite so heavy. This time, it felt like anticipation. The Natural History Museum was Marcus's favorite place in the world, and Sarah had forgotten how much she enjoyed watching him explore. He darted from exhibit to exhibit with the boundless energy of childhood, his face lighting up as he read aloud from the placards about dinosaurs and ancient civilizations. Mum, look, he called from across the Egyptian wing. This pharaoh was only 9 years old when he became king. Can you imagine? I can barely remember to brush my teeth, and he was running an entire country. Sarah laughed, her heart swelling with love for this remarkable little person who had somehow remained joyful and curious despite the upheaval in their lives. She had worried so much about how the divorce would affect him, about whether she was enough to fill the gaps left by David's absence. But watching Marcus now, she saw resilience and strength that reminded her of her own capacity to adapt and grow. Maybe they were both stronger than she had given them credit for. Mom? Marcus appeared at her elbow, his expression suddenly serious. Are you happy? The question caught her off guard. What do you mean, sweetheart? I mean really happy. Not just pretending to be happy for me happy. Sarah knelt down to meet his eyes, struck by how perceptive he was becoming. I'm working on it, baby. Some days are better than others. Marcus nodded solemnly. I liked the man who came to fix our ceiling today. He seemed nice. He did seem nice, Sarah agreed, wondering where this was going. And he made you smile. Like, really smile. Not the tired smile you give me when you're sad, but trying to hide it. Sarah's heart clenched. Had she been that transparent? Had her 10-year-old son been carrying the weight of her emotional well-being, along with everything else? Marcus, you don't have to worry about making me happy. That's not your job. I know, he said quietly. But I want you to be happy. And I think maybe you forgot how. The words hung between them in the museum's hushed atmosphere, surrounded by artifacts from civilizations that had risen and fallen and been forgotten. Sarah realized that her son, in his innocent wisdom, had identified something she had been. Too afraid to admit to herself. She had forgotten how to be happy. She had become so focused on survival, on getting through each day, on protecting Marcus from the pain of their fractured family, that she had stopped believing happiness was possible for her. You're right, she said finally. I think I did forget. But maybe ... maybe I can learn again. Marcus smiled, the first genuinely carefree smile she had seen from him in months. I think you can too, Mom. And I think that nice man might be a good teacher. When they returned home that evening, the water stain was gone. The ceiling had been repaired, repainted, and looked better than it had in years. But it was the note left on the kitchen counter that made Sarah's breath catch. Sarah, all fixed. The connection should hold for years now. I noticed a few other small things while I was working, tightened a loose faucet in the guest bathroom and adjusted a sticky hinge on the linen closet door. Hope you don't mind. Also, I took the liberty of leaving my number. Not for plumbing emergencies, though I'm always available for those, but in case you ever want to grab coffee. I know a place that makes the best apple turnovers in the city. JamesP.S. Your son left this for me. Attached to the note was a drawing Marcus had made that morning. A stick figure family of 2 people and a small boy, standing in front of a house with a notably intact roof. At the bottom, in his careful 3rd-grade handwriting, Marcus had written, "Thank you for fixing our ceiling. Mum smiles more when you're here." Sarah sank into a kitchen chair, holding the note and the drawing, feeling something shift inside her chest. It was terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. The possibility of letting someone new into their carefully constructed world. The risk of caring about someone who might leave. The chance that happiness might actually be possible again. Mom. Marcus appeared in the doorway, his school backpack still slung over his shoulder. Did you see what I drew? I saw it, sweetheart. It's beautiful. Are you going to call him? Sarah looked at her son, this wise, hopeful, resilient little person, who had somehow managed to see what she had been too afraid to acknowledge. He deserved to see his mother happy. He deserved to know that broken things could be fixed, that new beginnings were possible, that love could exist even after loss. Maybe, she said. Marcus grinned. I think you should. I think he makes you remember who you are when you're not just being my mom. The observation was so astute, so perfectly accurate, that Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. And who am I when I'm not just being your mom? You're the woman who used to dance in the kitchen while making breakfast. You're the woman who used to laugh at her own jokes. You're the woman who used to believe that good things could happen to people who deserved them. Sarah stared at her son, wondering when he had become so wise, so observant, so capable of seeing through her carefully maintained facades. And you think I deserve good things? I think you deserve everything good. Marcus said simply. And I think that man with the toolbox might be a good place to start. The coffee shop James had mentioned was a small, cozy place tucked between a bookstore and a vintage clothing shop. Sarah arrived early, nervous in a way she hadn't been since high school. She had changed clothes 3 times, settling finally on a simple blue dress that made her feel like herself, not David's ex-wife, not Marcus's mother, but simply Sarah. James was already there when she walked in, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups of coffee and a plate of the promised apple turnovers. He stood when he saw her, his smile warm and genuine. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said, pulling out her chair. "I wasn't sure either," Sarah admitted. "It's been a while since I've done this." "Define this," James said, his eyes twinkling. "Had coffee with someone who isn't my son, my lawyer, or my therapist." James laughed. "Well, I promise to be more interesting than at least 2 of those 3. As they talked, Sarah found herself relaxing in ways she hadn't in months. James was easy to be with, funny without trying too hard, interested without being invasive, present without being overwhelming. He told her about his work restoring old houses, about his daughter who was studying architecture in Portland, about his love of hiking and his terrible attempts at cooking. "What about you?" he asked. "What does Sarah Chun do when she's not managing?" "Household crises. I'm a graphic designer," she said. "Or I was, before Marcus was born. Now I freelance from home, mostly doing web design for small businesses." "Do you miss it? The office environment?" Sarah considered the question. "I miss the collaboration, the energy of working with a team. But I don't miss the commute or the office politics. And working from home means I can be there for Marcus when he needs me." "He's a great kid," James said. "Very perceptive. When I was working on the ceiling, he kept checking on me, asking if I needed anything. And he told me about the museum you were going to visit." His face lit up when he talked about it. "He's been my anchor through everything," Sarah said. "Some days I wonder if I'm enough for him, if I'm giving him everything he needs. From what I can see, you're doing an amazing job. He's confident, kind, curious about the world. Those things don't happen by accident." The words settled into a place in Sarah's heart that had been empty for too long. When had David last complimented her parenting? When had anyone last told her she was doing well at the most important job in her life? "Can I ask what happened?" James said gently. "With Marcus's father?" Sarah felt the familiar tightening in her chest, but this time it was manageable. He had an affair. Left 6 months ago to be with his secretary. It's such a cliché it's almost funny, except it's not funny at all when it's your life. "I'm sorry. That must have been devastating." "It was. But you know what the worst part was? I wasn't even surprised. I had felt him pulling away for months, maybe years. I just kept telling myself it was work stress, or that we were going through a rough patch, or that all marriages had their ups and downs." "Did you try to work it out?" "I tried. We went to counseling. I suggested date nights. I bent over backward trying to be the perfect wife. But you can't fix something when only one person is willing to do the work." James nodded, his expression understanding. "I went through something similar with my ex-wife. Not an affair, but she decided she wanted a different life, one that didn't include me or the responsibilities of marriage. She left when Emma was 12. How did you handle it?" "Badly, at first. I was angry, hurt, confused. I threw myself into work, trying to fix everyone else's houses because I couldn't fix my own life. But Emma She was my wake-up call. She needed me to be present, to be stable, to show her that love doesn't always end in betrayal. And now I'm grateful, not for the pain, but for what it taught me about what I actually want in a partner." I want someone who shows up, who chooses to be there even when it's hard, who sees building a life together as a daily decision, not just a one-time commitment. Sarah felt something shift inside her, a recognition, a resonance. That's exactly what I want too. But it's terrifying to think about risking that kind of vulnerability again. It is terrifying, James agreed. But the alternative is staying closed off, staying safe, staying alone. And I've learned that safe isn't always the same as happy. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the weight of shared understanding settling between them. Sarah realized that this was what she had been missing, not just romance, but genuine connection with someone who understood the complexity of starting over, of building something new from the wreckage of what came before. "Can I ask you something?" James said. "Of course. When you were married, did you ever feel like you were disappearing? Like you were becoming smaller and smaller, trying to fit into someone else's vision of who you should be?" Sarah's breath caught. "Yes, exactly that. I became so focused on being what David wanted that I forgot who I was underneath it all. I think that's the real tragedy of those kinds of relationships. It's not just that they end, it's that they convince you that you're not enough as you are." "But you are enough," Sarah said suddenly, surprising herself with the conviction in her voice. "You're absolutely enough." James smiled, and Sarah realized she had been talking to herself as much as to him. "So are you, Sarah, exactly as you?" Right now, in this moment you are enough." The words hit her like a revelation. She was enough. Not perfect, not finished, not without flaws or fears or moments of doubt. But enough. Worthy of love, worthy of happiness. Worthy of someone who chose to be with her. Not because she had convinced them or earned it, but because they genuinely wanted to be there. "I should probably head home," Sarah said reluctantly. "Marcus will be getting back from his friend's house soon. Of course. But Sarah... I'd like to see you again. Not just for coffee, but for real dates. I'd like to take you to dinner, maybe a movie, maybe that hiking trail I mentioned. I'd like to get to know you better." Sarah felt the familiar flutter of panic, the urge to retreat, to protect herself, to avoid the risk of caring about someone who might leave. But she also felt something stronger, the desire to be brave, to choose possibility over protection, to honor the woman Marcus had reminded her she used to be. "I'd like that too," she said, "but I need to take it slow. Marcus is my priority, and I can't introduce chaos into his life. I wouldn't want you to. We can take it as slow as you need." "I'm not going anywhere, Sarah." As they walked to their cars, James stopped and turned to her. "Thank you for today. For saying yes to coffee. For sharing your story. For letting me see who you really are." "Thank you for fixing my ceiling," Sarah said. "And for reminding me that broken things can be repaired. Sometimes," James said softly, "they come back even stronger than before." That night, after Marcus had been tucked into bed with a story and a kiss, Sarah sat at her kitchen table with a cup of tea and James's business card. The house was quiet, but it was a different kind of quiet than she had grown accustomed to. It was peaceful rather than lonely, full of possibility rather than echoing with absence. She thought about the conversation with Marcus in the museum, about his wise observation that she had forgotten how to be happy. She thought about James's words about choosing possibility over protection, about the risk of staying closed off versus the risk of opening up. Most of all, she thought about the woman she used to be, the one who danced in the kitchen and laughed at her own jokes and believed that good things could happen to people who deserved them. That woman was still there, she realized. She had just been buried under layers of disappointment and self-protection, and the exhausting work of holding her life together. But she was still there. And maybe, just maybe, it was time to let her back out. Sarah picked up her phone and typed a message. Thank you for coffee today. I had a wonderful time. Would you like to have dinner this weekend? I know a place that makes the best pasta in the city. She hit send before she could second-guess herself. The response came quickly. I would love that. And Sarah? I'm proud of you for taking the leap. Sarah smiled, feeling something warm and hopeful bloom in her chest. She was taking the leap. After months of playing it safe, of protecting herself from further hurt, of forgetting what it felt like to be excited about the future, she was choosing to be brave. She was choosing to remember who she was when she wasn't just surviving, but truly living. She was choosing to believe that broken things could indeed be fixed, and that sometimes they came back even stronger than before. The water stain was gone, the ceiling was repaired, and Sarah Chen was finally ready to let the sunlight back into her life. 6 months later, sound of laughter drifted through the house as Sarah put the finishing touches on Marcus's birthday cake. From the backyard, she could hear James explaining the finer points of grilling to Marcus, who was clearly taking his role as assistant very seriously. Mom! Marcus called through the screen door. James says the burgers are almost ready. Perfect timing. Sarah called back, lighting the candles on the cake. Bring everyone in. As her small group of friends and family gathered around the kitchen table, Sarah felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over her. The past 6 months had been a journey of rediscovery, not just of who she was as a woman, but of who she was as a person capable of joy, of love, of believing in new beginnings. She and James had indeed taken things slow, building their relationship on a foundation of friendship and mutual respect. They had talked for hours about their dreams, their fears, their hopes for the future. They had navigated the delicate process of introducing him into Marcus's life, watching with wonder as her son blossomed under the attention of a man who genuinely cared about his interests and opinions. Make a wish, birthday boy, Sarah said, placing the cake in front of Marcus. Marcus closed his eyes, his face serious with concentration. When he opened them, his smile was radiant. What did you wish for? Someone asked. I can't tell you, Marcus said solemnly, but I will say that some of it already came true. As the celebration continued around her, Sarah caught James's eye across the table. He smiled at her, that same warm, genuine smile that had made her remember what it felt like to be truly seen. She smiled back, feeling the truth of Marcus's words settle into her heart. Some of her wishes had already come true too. She had remembered how to be happy. She had learned that broken things could be fixed. She had discovered that love could exist even after loss, that new beginnings were possible, that she was worthy of someone who chose to be with her every single day. Later that evening, as they cleaned up the birthday celebration, James pulled her aside. Penny for your thoughts? He asked. I was thinking about that morning Marcus knocked on the bathroom door, Sarah said. When he asked me if I was going to find someone new, someone who would make me happy again. And I realized now that the question wasn't really about finding someone new. It was about finding myself again, about remembering that I deserved happiness, that I was capable of it, that it was okay to want more than just survival. James nodded, understanding. And now? Now I know that happiness isn't something someone else gives you. It's something you choose every day. It's something you build, piece by piece, like fixing a house. Some days the work is hard. Some days it's easy, but every day you get to choose whether to keep building or to let it fall apart. And what do you choose? Sarah looked around at her home, at the repaired ceiling, at the photos of Marcus laughing, at the signs of a life being rebuilt from the ground up. She thought about the woman she used to be, the woman she was becoming, and the woman she still had the potential to be. I choose to keep building, she said. I choose happiness. I choose love. I choose all of it. James pulled her into his arms, and Sarah felt the truth of her words settle into her bones. She had learned that broken things could be fixed, that new beginnings were possible, that love could exist even after loss. But most importantly, she had learned that she was enough. Exactly as she was, in this moment, with all her flaws and fears and moments of doubt, she was enough. And that knowledge, that deep, unshakable knowing, made all the difference in the world. The water stain was gone, the ceiling was repaired, and Sarah Chen was finally, truly home.